The Interrobang podcast is brought to you by Simply Financial. Flex on your ex-bank with up to $700 from Simply Financial. Visit simply.com today. Conditions apply.
Hello and welcome to the Red Couch Podcast. I am your host, Ben Harrietha. It's time for another episode of Reporter Rants. We've got another great episode of the podcast coming up. Interrobang Editor Hannah Theodore will be on to talk about the new issue of the Interrobang that will be coming out today. But first, just going to make sure that you guys all know what's going on regarding the new format. So as you guys know, we switched to video podcast last episode. The response has been great so far. Really thank you for that, guys. We'll still be doing video episodes bi-weekly. So last Friday, you got a video episode. Me and Ishmael are on the eponymous Red Couch of the podcast. Next Friday, you'll get another video have a special big name guest from around the school or London. In between those episodes, we'll have audio episodes like this one, where it'll be me or one of the other hosts of the show with a reporter discussing the new issue of the Interrobang. All episodes will be uploaded on the same usual platforms, so Spotify, podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, but also YouTube as well. The audio episodes will still just be audio only, but we'll have some simple graphics to go along with the video. So, just to recap, to make sure everything's clear and dandy and good, all episodes will continue to be uploaded on all the platforms that you usually can get your podcast on. On the weeks that we print a new issue, we will have a Reporter Rants episode, which is audio only, discussing what's going into the new issue. Then, on the weeks where we don't have a new issue, it'll be a video podcast with a guest. So, with that, on to the show. Hannah, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Ben. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's our first episode of Reporter Rants after the format switch.
Yeah, this is the Red Couch Podcast Reporter Rants edition.
Yes.
Audio only.
Audio only, and we're going to be talking about the upcoming issue of the Interrobang, which should be fun.
Yes.
Our Black History Month issue.
Yes, dropping the same day that this episode will be coming out, so timing works out perfectly.
Yes, exactly. And pick up your copy of Interrobang on newsstands now,
Yes, literally right now.
So I guess you're the editor. You see everything that goes through the issue. I also see everything that goes into the issue, but you're the one who sees it first. So can we get a preview of what's coming up in this issue?
Yeah, so the Black History Month issue is quite unique to everything else that we do throughout the year, because a huge portion of it is made up of submissions by students and faculty and community members. I think almost everything we got this year was from Fanshawe students, though. And we really broaden the scope of what we accept. So, if you pick up a typical issue of Interrobang, you're going to have a lot of articles, feature style articles, news, culture, and opinion. For this issue, we kind of open it up to artwork and poetry, short stories, essays, really anything that people want to submit. We will find a place for it in this issue. And it's kind of twofold. So part of it is, one, we would never want to say only certain people can submit. So either you can submit stories or articles that speak to the Black experience in some way. Maybe you've done an article where you're exploring Black history, and you yourself might not be Black, but you're taking the time to look into that and research and interview the right people. And then on the flip side, it's also an opportunity for Black creators and Black writers and Black artists to submit their work and have a platform in Interrobang. So it's a really special issue. Everything, even the cover of this issue, was submitted by a student. And we never know what we're going to get, right? So this was quite lucky that we had a piece of art that worked as a cover piece as well. So yeah, it's always fun to put together this issue again, because it's just such a surprise every time. And we got quite lucky this year with a lot of great artwork, a lot of great poetry, and two really great articles from Fanshawe's anti-racism and inclusion specialist, Troy Townsend, as well. So yeah, it's this issue will be on stands for a long time too, because because of Reading Week, we won't have another issue coming out till February 24th. So there's lots of time to enjoy it. It's a long issue too. We're 24 pages. So there's a lot of good stuff.
It's that cover is striking. Like I'm
Yes.
when you put the proof of it on my desk, I was like, holy crap! Like that is
Yeah.
amazing.
The
Uh,
artist, like, I asked the artist if they would kind of give me like a anyone who submitted art, I asked if they could provide like a description or a little background into it because I really appreciate that. Like, as you know, if I'm at a museum or if I'm looking at art, I love when there's a little bit of an explanation behind it.
mhm.
And so what they kind of explained was that that particular piece was like an exploration in color, and in like in like skin tone and just like even like and like the eyes are closed, so you're not even looking at you're just looking at the face without the eyes. And it's just so like thoughtful, and you can sense that the artist was thinking about all of those pieces when they were creating the art, and it actually like translates through it very well. So we were really happy to have received that and to give it a spot on the cover, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's kind of perfect that we have that that we have reading week right in the middle of the I guess the run of this issue.
Yeah.
Because, for most of Black History Month, what's going to be on newsstands is our Black History Month issue.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it just
It's
works out perfectly.
Yeah, yeah, you have the whole month to kinda take it in and to revisit it if you want, and, even if there's that like, students are kinda in and out during reading week, right? But for the ones that are here, it's like they'll have that extra opportunity to pick up their copy too.
Awesome. And so you spoke on getting submissions from students and putting that all together. How was that like? Like what's the process there of deciding kind of like what everything where everything goes, um if there's any editing that needs to be done to anything.
Yeah,
Like
that's a great question. Sorry to cut you off. Was there
no
more?
worries.
Um, so basically, like the process of calling for submissions. We started this right before we left for the winter break. Last year, we kind of like it wasn't the best way that we timed it out. We kind of waited till we got back from winter break to start promoting it. So this year we started really early, just kind of like dropping hints that this was coming and that people had the opportunity. And then something I tried doing more of this year was call outs like using Instagram Reels. And just I don't know, I think people really respond to that kind of content for some reason. Like video stuff really gets promoted on Instagram. Those videos got a lot of attention and they were just me answering questions about the submission process and what people could submit. And they would get kind of shared around. I would tag like every Fanshawe department just being like, spread this, tell everyone. And it worked. Like this was in previous years we've collaborated with Western and we've been able to kind of use their outlets as well to reach students. This year we kind of did everything through our channels, but it was one of the more successful years in terms of like the quantity of submissions we received. So it just goes to show, I think, that there's a lot of talent here at Fanshawe, um, just kind of like waiting for an opportunity to show it. So that was cool to see. In terms of like editing things that came in. So if it's like an article or a short story, I might apply the same type of editing that I would apply to like a regular article. I'm checking for all the same like grammatical errors and CP style stuff that we know and love. But for things like poetry, and this is kind of an interesting piece too, right? Like punctuation in poetry is very deliberate. And
Mhm.
so even though as I'm looking at someone's poem and thinking like, oh, I would put a comma here, or I would put a period here or a question mark there, there's a good chance that the author was deliberately making those choices to not include those pieces of punctuation. So for the poetry, I really would just I would format them into like the correct font size and formatting style, but then I wouldn't really mess with them at all. Um, just because, when it's something creative like that, you really want to respect the integrity of what the author intended. So there's that extra piece. It's like a different editing style. And then the actual layout was done by someone on our team, which previously we would kind of just, I have a graphic designer that I work with who helps lay out the paper every issue. And normally she would kind of put together these Black History Month pages. But this year we were actually able to give that to a student, Brianna Brissett, who works in our office. And so all of the Black History Month pages were designed by Brianna. And so the only kind of guidance I would give her was to say, okay, so for example, there's one poem called We Shall Overcome, They Say, which was submitted by Sade Diaz. And I really felt that it had a lot of impact, and I wanted it to be the last page of the section, and I wanted it to stand on its own. I said, you got to have that at the end and a foreword from Troy Townsend at the start. Everything else is kind of yours to play with. And with some guidance from us along the way. So a lot of those like layout choices were Brianna and like her creativity and her eye for graphic design. There were like I said, kind of like the couple of notes that I really wanted to see, but so much of that was just her playing around and creating something that I think is really awesome and shows she's been with us now since like summer, and she's grown so much as an artist and a graphic designer. And I think this is kind of like the culmination of all of that experience that she's been building here. So that was really cool as well to be able to give her that opportunity.
And I only saw the I guess the first proofs of it, but they look like amazing. Like they're
Yeah.
so like striking. I think she made like a really cool decision to have it all the pages be just like monochrome, just black and
Yeah.
white. And I thought that was like a really, really cool decision. I liked the little logo she made, like
Yeah.
super, super, super interesting. And like with the features and stuff, like I don't get to see that with the proofs. So
Yeah.
it's always really cool when I get to see when I get the issue and it's like, oh sweet, how's this gonna look? And I think for this issue especially, I'm so, so excited to see how everything like comes together in the actual print
Yeah.
format.
Yeah.
Because I
It's
think it's
gonna
it'll look
it
really cool.
it's always a little well, yeah, and it's always a little different too, right? Like you see the proofs and they look one way and then they come in newsprint and it's always like a little bit different. Like you're looking at the center spread, for example, and when you're looking at a PDF, it's hard to picture what it's going to look like when you have the paper open in front of you. So seeing that final product, I think, will be the real like gratifying moment when we finally have this issue like in our hands, and we can share it with other people too, because we started the process so early, it feels like we've been sitting on this issue for a long time. So
Yeah.
it'll be fun to kind of get it out there.
So you said, I was going to ask about like the response we got from people about
Hmm.
the submissions. You said it was pretty good though. Like people were excited to hear about that we were taking
Yeah.
submissions.
Yeah, big time. Like if I wasn't getting I got a lot, like most of the submissions came in as you would predict, like on the day of the deadline or the day before.
Of course.
But like leading up to that point, like I received a lot of inquiries, a lot of questions, a lot of people, looking for like specifications and just being really excited about the fact that this opportunity was there. And I did notice too, like on social media, the response to those videos was just really over like positive. And it seemed like they were getting a lot of eyeballs on them, just people that were interested in the fact that we were doing this. So yeah, it was a really strong year for just general interest in the submission process. So that was cool to see.
Definitely. And were you at all worried that we weren't going to have enough for
Oh,
this
every
issue?
time. Yeah, every time, always. Like we've had, and I think after last year, like I think last year with school being remote for so much of the year, it was a lot harder to reach students, I think. Um, like we made a point this year with all that social media promotion, we also we had flyers and ads in the paper that people were seeing, everywhere they went on campus. Um, and posters up everywhere. But last year, the only way that we could reach people was through social media, or like me frantically reaching out to program coordinators, being like, "Please tell your students about this." So there were times last year where I really thought we weren't going to make it, and I think it showed to me this year the difference between in person versus remote learning, because although I was worried, once I saw the flow of stuff that started coming in closer to the deadline, I was like, "Wow, okay, people are responding a lot quicker and in droves this year compared to previous years." Because we even tried, like last year, we did a cover contest as well, for our diversity issue, and it was just so minimal. Like the amount of people who ended up submitting was just you hope that you're going to have tons of options, and in the end we didn't have very many. So I think it speaks to people's desire to be involved. I just noticed actually, like Sade Diaz, after she submitted that poem, I'm seeing her on my LinkedIn, and she's with like part of the We're Hired campaign with Fanshawe College. So this is a person who is clearly so involved with the college, and who
Mhm.
saw this opportunity and helped us out too. So I do see like a real push from students to want to do things and to actually respond to opportunities. So that's been really cool.
And so this is our. I remember reading in the letter to the editor, letter from the editor.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is our third Black History Month issue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this started a year before I came on with our editor, Angela McInnes. And at that time, it was a collaboration between us and the Black Students Association at Western. Um, and it was a huge success as well. And so then I took over the following year, and we did a lot of the same things. We also changed a few things. And then this year was kind of the biggest leap, because this was the first time that we really kept it, super Fanshawe focused. But hopefully it can continue. And, I always say, as much as like it was lucky that almost all the submissions were Fanshawe students, but anyone can submit. I would never like I've opened it up to the community. I opened it up to students at Western. Like those opportunities never go away. So hopefully in the future we can get even more coming from beyond Fanshawe too, because the more the merrier, honestly.
Definitely. Um, what would be your ideal? Like, how many pages of would you want to have? I
I
guess.
mean, like this issue had 8 full pages of like Black History Month content. I would love to get it to like 10, maybe if it was like, because already like 24 pages is pretty, like it's on the longer side for us, but we can get up to like 32 pages in Interrobang. So if we could fill it out even more with more of that feature content, like I would take it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hell yeah. I mean, like, yeah, like you said, the more the merrier,
Yeah.
and it's always great to see. I think people getting like excited for to see something in a like to submit something for a newspaper, because it's like sometimes I think I get in the weeds a little bit of like we're a newspaper, the print medium's dying, yada yada, but then like I see how many people take you know copies off the newsstands, and I see how excited people were to submit things for this issue, that I'm like, maybe it's not so bad, you know.
Yeah, no, I think especially for creators and writers and anyone in that field, like uh, being published, regardless of where you're published, is an accomplishment. And so I know that it doesn't matter, as if you have a byline in something, even if it's a newspaper, it's a magazine, um, that is a huge thing. And I know that for anyone who submitted, um, or I hope anyway, that this will be something that they can like cherish and remember and feel good about the fact that they were a part of it, right?
Definitely, definitely. And have we always taken reader submissions for Black History Month? Like, is it like since it started, or?
Yeah, that was the initial intent. When Angela first started the issue, the idea was uh, purely to give Black creators a platform. I've kept that part of it, but like I was saying, there's that other piece, right? Where it's like, I'm not going to turn anyone away. And if you have done the proper work, and you've done the right interviews, we want to platform anything that is helping to like spread awareness and start conversations. But yeah, the submissions piece was always part of it.
It's it's hard to, I think it's hard to pick like a favorite, obviously, but what's
Yeah.
been submitted that is your favorite?
I mean, like I said, like I loved the cover's amazing. But I did like that the poem that Sade submitted. I was really happy to kind of give that its own page and its own moment. We did receive some really great digital art early on from a student whose artist's name is Lost Digits. They're a photography student here at Fanshawe, but they also do like really cool graphic design. And so they made up like just really cool, like futuristic digital art, and it all had cool stories behind it, which was awesome. And then Brie, even so, Brianna, who designed all those pages, also took time to create artwork to submit as well. And so she did up a whole page of animated characters that she'd created with little descriptions of each character. So I really loved that as well. But yeah, really, really everything, like all the poetry, all the artwork. But yeah, those were some of the standouts for sure.
Speaking of the lost digits, I told you that I ran into him for a story that I was doing,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
photography story, yeah, it's totally small world because we ended up talking about the Interrobang, and I gave him the spiel about, oh, we're taking submissions for our Black History Month issue if you want to submit anything. And he goes,
Yeah.
"Oh, I already have. Do you want to see what I submitted?" And so I got a little early peek as to what was going to be in the issue.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, we've talked a lot about the submissions that we've gotten
Mhm.
for um for the issue. Uh, what about some of the stuff from just like our writing team? Like, I guess if there's
Yeah.
anything interesting from there, I
And
know we've
yeah.
got a couple interesting articles there.
Yeah, there's some really good ones going in. So for news this issue, you did up a great article about the expansion of the Learn and Stay grant.
Yep.
Johan is giving us a heads up about Share the Land, which for anyone who doesn't know is like annual charity concert that the MIA students put together. It's really awesome. It's like a huge thing every year. Um, Kate got to talk to Brandon on our team about the 48-hour film challenge that the contemporary media students do. So that's great. I love when we get to like interview people that are on our team. And Brandon's film sounds really awesome.
Yeah, it
So
sounds so cool.
so cool. Um, and then yeah, our opinion section is great. We got a great rewind from you this issue about Marvin Gaye. And
Yeah.
then sort of as a nice complementary piece to your news focused article about the Learn and Stay grant, our reporter Dee Dee Samuels actually wrote an opinion piece about some of the flaws with that plan, which I like the contrast of that within one issue. Um, culture, I am so like Zoe King, who people need to understand. Zoe King is not a reporter for Interrobang. Zoe
Yeah.
King is our sales and ad rep in the FSU publications office. But she is like a machine, and she offers to write for us whenever she has free time, which I truly don't even know how she has any of free time. But there were like two performances left at the Grand of Controlled Damage, which is a play that was written by a playwright from London about Viola Desmond. And we were like, gosh, like we were a little late to the game, but it would be so awesome to get a review of this show in Interrobang. And Zoe just like latched onto the idea. She got so excited about the prospect of going to see it and then being able to write about it. And so we set it up. We got the tickets. She went off on a Saturday night and saw the show and wrote this amazing review. I don't think she's ever written a play review before.
Yeah.
But it's awesome, and the way she, like, described how it made her feel, and, you know, she summarized the story so beautifully too. It's a shame the play is closed now, but I think if you really wanna experience how it felt and how it was staged, like, Zoe does a really good job of highlighting all of that. So she is like, I said after that, I was like, all right, you're on our theater beat now. Like, I'm sending you the
Yeah.
Grand every time there's a play. Like, I want your reviews. So that
No,
was
she killed that one. It was
yeah.
great.
Yeah. Really awesome. And the photos that we were able to get from the Grand as well, like just really stunning. So that was awesome. And then yeah, like this is our first issue too that we have an update coming from Fuel. So part of our sports
Mhm.
section now is incorporating some of the stats and updates coming from Fanshawe's Esports League. And so those are being submitted by someone on their team named Alex Allen. And so he's kind of giving us a rundown. If you're interested in esports, especially collegiate esports, I think you'll really like the articles that Alex is writing. Um, so those are fun. It's fun to have that extra inclusion in the sports section now. Um, Kind of just like opening up what can go in sports and how sports is expanding. So that's kind of a cool new piece too. So there's a lot. It's a good issue, a solid issue front to back, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I do the second passes on all the on editing, and so I get to read the
Mhm.
issue a little earlier than most people, and it's a stacked issue. Like it's good. It's like
Yeah,
every article, I'm like, damn, this is like a really good. I'm enjoying this a lot.
yeah, yeah.
And like you said, Zoe, what a trooper!
I
Like
know.
I'm like, she's probably like wicked busy because she's also in school, right?
She's in school full time. She works here part time, already doing her job as an ad sales rep, and then she also writes for Interrobang just on top of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's a champion. She's a Virgo, so it makes
of
sense.
course. Yeah. Yeah, and I did want to I wanted to talk about the rewind with the Marvin Gaye because I have
Hmm.
I haven't listened to that album before. That was I had heard from a lot of people who are like really really into music as like to be like that's like a really great album.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with a lot of people telling you this is a really great album is you go in expecting an album to be great, and then when it's not like the greatest thing ever, you're kind of a little disappointed.
Yeah.
I listened to this album, and it's genuinely one of the most like the best albums I've ever listened to.
That's awesome. I love
It's
that
so good.
it's a cool approach that because you mentioned in the article that like normally you choose records that you already are familiar with or that you
Yes.
have some kind of connection to, but it's kind of cool getting people's like raw first reaction to something. So I think that was a cool approach for this issue and for that album. So yeah, it was really cool to just read like upon a first listen or first couple of listens, like your main takeaways. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
because
it was awesome.
it's like I could talk for hours about this album. I think there are so many like intricacies and nuances to the album, but obviously we don't have that kind of time. um, but it's just it was such an interesting, and it was a challenging review to write, I think, because
Mm,
I usually I'm much more of like a rock fan, like a rock
right.
metal, specifically like alt rock,
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of stuff. So this was really, really out of my wheelhouse. I think the
Yeah,
closest thing I've listened to with this album is like, some jazz. That's it.
right.
I'm not like huge into the soul scene.
Yeah,
Um, but even after like a first listen where I'm just kind of like uh getting my initial thoughts of the album together, it was kind of like, man, this is legit. Like this is
yeah. Well, and
like
so much of it is like the basis for like genres that would come out of that, right? Whether it's funk or disco or hip hop, right? Like the amount of samples that
yeah,
reference this era of music. That's like you can kind of make all those connections, which I think is also super cool if you're like tracing like a history of music too, which I do feel like there's been like a through line with all of the rewinds, right?
yeah. It's I like to I like to look at old albums in like a modern context.
Hmm.
And I think especially this album really, really holds up today.
Yeah,
Specifically because so many artists today cite Marvin Gaye as an inspiration
yeah,
for their work, right? Like you can look at there's like so many of the popular like Kendrick Lamar is an obvious one.
yeah.
He he even samples Marvin Gaye a lot. Like I think the most latest time he did it was on the Heart Part 5. He
Mm,
sampled a Marvin Gaye track. The Weekend cites
yep,
him as an inspiration. So I really like to look at take like, you know, here are these albums. Let's look at it, God, for that album 50 years on,
yeah,
which is crazy. Um But yeah, it's God, it's just such a good album. And it's I think it's an interesting just for Marvin Gaye as well, because it's like they he was already pretty famous before that album came out.
Yeah.
Um, but that album is like what made him famous as we know him today,
Mm-hmm.
because that started a lot of like the stuff that he would do going forward. Like
Right.
his new vocal style, his new instrumental style.
Right,
And I
right,
think
right.
that it's really interesting that he almost had two rises to fame.
Yeah. They're like turning
Um,
point records, I think, for a lot of artists where you can say like, okay, this is like the new era, and how it's weird how certain versions of artists are the ones that get ingrained in our memories, right?
yeah,
Um, I'm trying to think of an example, but I think like when people think of like the Beatles, you either think of four dudes in suits with funny haircuts, or you think of like late 60s hippie Beatles, right? There's like
yeah,
two versions that you think of, and the music that corresponds to each of those eras too, right? Um, but there's a lot of stuff in between or before or after, right? But yeah, it's, I think with someone like Marvin Gaye, it's like what leaves the strongest impact, right?
okay, I gotta stop talking about this
Yeah.
album, because like I said, I can't talk about this album for like hours. It's just such an interesting album, and I think if anyone listening has a takeaway from any of this episode, the number one takeaway is pick up your copy on Interrobang on newsstands now.
Yes.
The second takeaway is listen to What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. It is
Yeah.
amazing.
Two
So
good takeaways. If I could say just one additional thing, while we're on the topic of Black history and with this issue coming out this Friday or today when you're listening to this, and I'm not trying to sound like a total soapbox, but the like I think it's important to remember why Black History Month exists, and to keep in mind that every other month of the year is White History Month, because that is what is considered normal in Western culture, and we don't give space enough to Black voices and Black artists, um, and that has real world impacts. Right, we are in once again, right, just in this past month, we're seeing once again like Black men being killed at the hands of police, inequality up and down the United States, still in Canada, whether you're looking at Black folks, Indigenous folks, trans folks. Like there is a lot of uphill battles that we are still fighting, um, and so this is a drop in the bucket, but this is hopefully our contribution to that conversation. And I just want people to remember that um, there are a lot of positives and a lot of interesting and education based things that you can do this month to engage with Black history. But through that, to never forget that the reason that we're acknowledging this is because there are generations of just trauma and suffering that this community has faced. And so keep that in mind while you enjoy this issue, and remember that like there is a reason that we are doing this, and that can be another takeaway from this issue and this entire month. Really, don't stop engaging.
exactly. If we can do one little thing to make the world a little bit better, you know?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right. Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on, Hannah.
Thank you so much for having me. I think this is going to be a great month and a great issue, and I hope everyone enjoys what we've put out there.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Red Couch Podcast. As always, you can catch up with every episode on our website or YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Pick up your copy of Interrobang on newsstands now, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and be sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep up with all things Fanshawe. For the Interrobang, I'm Ben Harrietha.
The Interrobang podcast is brought to you by Simply Financial. Flex on your ex-bank with up to $700 from Simply Financial. Visit simply.com today. Conditions apply.